We're here today on Country Pocket with Josh Fortenbery. The new album is Tiny Memorial, and I really appreciate this one because you seem to have figured out just how absurd all of the dialogue is these days. And I think it's nice to see someone not necessarily treating the situation as absurd, but recognizing that we've gotten to a place where everything we say is absurd. Um, so, first song we just heard is Heavens Above. Um, we want to fight a peaceful war, but we want to win. Uh, Tell me about the mindset you've noticed in culture these days.
Yeah. I think we all intuitively understand that it's becoming more difficult to talk about meaningful things without sort of devolving into name calling. Um, but, I would say through my 20s, I was able to sort of disassociate a little bit and just sort of accept the fact that nothing was going to be any better than it was. I've been calling this first song like a eulogy for nihilism, sort of coming to terms with the fact that at some point it becomes impossible to, I guess, just stand on the sidelines and watch things fall apart and watch the absurdity without recognizing that you're somehow complicit or involved in it a little bit. So yeah, I don't know that I have any answers. I think it's more just trying to understand where we are, understand why it's so difficult for us to talk to one another, and understand that I'm not, sitting on a cloud millions of miles above this looking down. I'm right in the middle of it all. So I have to come to terms with that too.
I mean, you are a few thousand miles above it, just not in the way you mean.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, do live in Juneau, Alaska, so I'm fairly isolated, I suppose, from the daily grind and the hubbub of the lower 48. Um, but I travel down there a lot to play, and a lot of friends still live down there, and obviously read the news a lot, which probably shows from the mental state of some of these lyrics. So I think it's hard not to pay attention, no matter where you are.
Yeah, even over here, you get the sense that if America gets crazier, everything is just going to get crazier. Like we are, for better or worse, role models for the free world, and I think it might be for worse right now. Um,
Yeah, I do think for anyone, probably particularly folks in the U.S., it's really easy to place yourself at the center of the storm, or think that your situation is uniquely bad or uniquely important. But I think worldwide, we're all dealing with the same information bubbles and social media algorithms that push us into these sort of media diets that are tailored to our own suspicions and our own biases and make it difficult for us to see outside of them. So I do think the things we're experiencing here, or the difficulty in having sort of a constructive dialogue, is probably a global problem because everyone's getting sucked into these internet rabbit holes.
yeah, uh, that's I mean, it's a global problem, although these internet rabbit holes are sort of a one of the great American exports of the last few decades.
Sure.
Sort of the only alternative to the American rabbit holes seem to be the state-controlled um, networks of China, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'll take Mark Zuckerberg in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I guess it's the traditional American hand wringing over public versus private. Do you want a public sort of disinformation and propaganda machine, or a private propaganda machine? And at least in the private one, I suppose we have a little bit more free choice. You can choose your propaganda.
Yeah, dark times. Dark time.
A little bit.
Um, so I like the way you're sort of getting into the mindset of people in these silos and maybe, just maybe, showing that if you push even gently, there will be some cracks. Nobody cares like I do, but I'm pretty sure you think nobody cares like you. It's almost as if we all have opinions and interests and things we're rooting for.
Yeah, I definitely um I'm I try to be really careful not to imply that I have any answers. I have a lot of questions, and I guess my hope is to make other people ask questions, as opposed to thinking that they also have the answers. It's I think it's really hard in modern society to have empathy for folks who disagree with you, or to try to understand how they could have possibly come to believe what they believe. Um, but I think, by trying to find sort of universality in some of the things we might all be feeling, regardless of your political beliefs, and hopefully encourage people to recognize that, you know, maybe both sides think that they're right, and they're both doing what they're doing because they think that they're doing something helpful. Um, Again, I don't have any answers here.
Oh,
I
I
just
don't
have a
know.
lot of
That
questions.
sounds dangerously like you're starting to get into the world of answers.
God forbid. No, I don't know. I think I have hopes. I'm trying to be less hopeless. And to find hope, I think you have to, at least in your mind, imagine that there's some different path forward or different world that could exist eventually. And so you think of all these hypotheticals, and the hypothetical I guess I've been focused on lately is there, is there a world in which we eventually enough people eventually realize that they're being lied to from whatever their media diet is, or that the things they've been promised don't come to pass. And maybe that makes folks start to ask more questions. And if you ask more questions, maybe you expand the scope of what you read. I don't know that any of that. Maybe this is all very optimistic or wishful thinking. Um, but I've found it more difficult to lean into complete helplessness because it's hard to get out of bed that way.
Yeah, so like you're feeling the hopelessness is harder to live with, but is the hopefulness harder to feed yourself?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's probably true. Um, it's this weird thing. Like I don't have kids myself, but now I have a niece and a lot of friends now all have really young kids. Um, and so it it does do a weird thing where it's easier, I think, to be more of a nihilist when you're not hanging out with anyone that's under the age of 20. And then now when you're surrounded by these young kids at social gatherings or family gatherings, it feels like you have this responsibility to at least imagine what could be different. But you're right. I mean, that the hopefulness is it's a tough thing to spoon feed yourself some days.
Yeah, there's this unique quality about young people. The way I like to put it is they motivate me to get out of bed and, give it my all every single day, but they also suck every drop of energy out of me. So that by the weekend, I just want to spend the day in bed. So,
I
um,
yeah.
they what I'm saying is they are a remarkable drug.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think I would agree. For better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse. So I wanted to sort of contrast your characters at the beginning of the album who are um, arguing with statues and believing that perhaps they've won.
Hmm.
I want to put them next to your relationship in Poppy's Waltz with someone who, from what I gather, you have some respect and affection for, but you also have some substantial disagreements with.
Yeah. And full disclosure, most of these quote unquote characters are largely versions of myself, versions of myself at certain points in time when I was writing the song, probably. So I'm certainly prone to self-criticism. Um, but yeah, but Poppy's Waltz is about my grandfather, who I wouldn't say I had a lot of disagreements with. We had one particular
Mm.
subject that we couldn't really discuss because it was our largest disagreement, and this existed in a lot of that side of my family. So he's from the World War II generation, Jewish man, grew up in the South. Most American Jews his age um, came to view, the founding of the state of Israel as destiny and as a safe haven for Jews who just escaped the Holocaust. And I grew up obviously with a different set of life experiences and history, and so the state has never meant that for me. I've always viewed it through a lens of apartheid, separation, oppressive state control. Treating people the way you don't want to be treated. So it was more less of a thing we argued about as a subject we didn't talk about. It was more of a taboo almost in that household, just because there was no way to see eye to eye, to see things the same way. I think because of just our different life experiences. We just had seen different things and we imagined it in a different way. Um, obviously, as some of my other lyrics might give away, I'm prone to think I'm correct, and I still think I'm right about this one. um, but yeah, it's also I think that doesn't mean that he was a bad person. I think that's what's become more difficult to talk about today. That wrapping up, trying to understand where someone's coming from, and trying to understand why they might believe what they believe, even if you think they're wrong about something. I still think you can live your life in a way that shows you're compassionate, kind, caring, um, while holding some beliefs that I might find difficult to accept.
Yeah, I mean, I think a topic that you found taboo in your household wound up, becoming taboo for like the world.
Yeah,
So that's got to be a pretty interesting experience watching your dynamic sort of take on a life well beyond, I'm sure, what you could have imagined. Um,
yeah. I'd say it's heartbreaking, really, because it, had to get this bad for it to become a global conversation. It's been bad for a long time. It's just, not something that was on everyone's radar because people didn't have family there, didn't have direct experiences with the state. And so I, I think it just, there's so many tragedies the world over for people to focus on. Um, and the cynical side of me wonders if this is, people grab onto the popular protest movement of the day and whether this is the thing that is in vogue to be upset about and that people might lose interest eventually or whether they're really going to hang on and maybe there's real change coming. It's always hard to say. Um, but I do think there's a lot of people who genuinely feel upset, and the difficulty with seeing it explode into like a global conversation um, is it's it feels to me like a tricky conversation to enter in the regular world as a Jewish person, because there's a lot of expectations about what you will say and do, and there certainly has been an increase in anti-Semitism, but I don't equate anti-Israel sentiments with anti-Semitism. Wow, that's a lot of sentiments, and Semitism are tough to say next to each other. But
Yeah,
those
I
have
would
been wrapped
agree.
up too. So it's become really hard, I think, to sort of disaggregate all those things to say, I don't agree with, I think this state is acting wrongly. I think this person is acting wrongly. I don't think that that reflects on Jewish people as a whole. But I also don't think Jewish people they should be held solely responsible for fixing this. Um, I don't know. It's hard for me because I didn't grow up religious. I didn't grow up, you know, traveling to Israel or anything like that. I don't have involvement with that country. So it's not like I have any particular set of skills or knowledge that would fix anything. But it seems like there's an expectation of you just because of your born identity. Just odd.
Yeah, it does seem crazy. I mean, the problem was very much created out of a combination of let's just say German misbehavior. Sure, everyone knows how dark things got in Europe in the 1940s. Then the British and their colonialism created the state of Israel as a solution in which uh, somehow after everything Germany did, the right answer seemed to be to take land from people who had nothing to do with the atrocities. So there's a bit of an original sin sort of thing going on there, but even in the modern day, it becomes how do these two groups of people coexist or fail to coexist? And yeah, um, I think you have a good point. The people who currently inhabit Israel, whether they are Israeli or Palestinian, did not start this particular fire, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
I don't know how else to put it. Like this was this was lit by Europeans.
yeah. I mean, I think that's certainly you go back far enough in time. I think um, you can point to the formation of the state as just another example of, European colonialism expelling a native population. Of course, there's going to be arguments on the Zionist side that there was a lot of Jews who were already living there that used to live there. All those things are to me theoretical debates. The thing that I find the most sort of tangible today is just like state perpetrated violence, and it doesn't matter to me who is running the state. Doesn't matter to me how the state, I guess, came to be at this point. Like the thing that's unquestionable is that there's just an incomprehensible amount of state perpetrated violence, funded by weapons that are coming from the U.S. That have been just indiscriminately targeting civilians. And like going to the root causes, I think is it's interesting to go back in time from a historical standpoint. But the most thing that I think people viscerally feel is just watching the devastation. And how do we stop this? How do we rebuild? And then how do we learn to treat everyone who's living within the confines of these artificially drawn borders as human that has their own agency, that's not trapped behind a wall? And that I just don't know. Obviously, I don't know. This is not my area of expertise. It's just one of those things that makes you feel sort of a deep sort of despair somewhere in the background all the time, and you can distract yourself from it. But it certainly makes you pretty sad to think about whenever you do.
Yeah, despair, I think, is unfortunately becoming more and more just the way I'm consuming my news diet. Like
Yeah,
I would really like to believe things get better, but I'm gonna need to see a tiny bit of it before I can start buying into that concept, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, so I totally hear you. And um but I guess I'm trying really hard not to live in that world of despair all the time because some of these things are so big that if I put myself in a situation of saying like I can't feel good until all these major problems are fixed, that road goes on forever, I think, because there's always um humans are a pretty greedy, nasty, mean little species. There's a lot of harm being done all the time. So I guess what I try to focus on is a lot more um, in my neighborhood, in my community, and that's part of the reason I live up here in Juneau, Alaska. It's a smaller town, but there's so much kindness and community spirit and neighborliness that I get to see on a day-to-day basis. Interacting with folks in my music community sort of give me that uplifting feeling. Going to concerts where independent venues, or buying a record from an artist that's coming up, like all these things give me a connection to something real that is to me like proof of good things that humans can do. We can make you feel, we can make beautiful art, we can have a nice afternoon together, we can go out and provide food to people who need it. So like finding these little things I think to do to make you feel like it's not hard to go volunteer to a shelter for an afternoon and cook, or take some food to the food bank, or like I said, just show up to a show. There's a bunch of little sort of human interactions that are available to everyone, that to me make a pretty big difference in like my general outlook on the world. Otherwise, I would be, if I just read the news and I just looked at all this big stuff, I think I'd be sucked into that pit all the time too. And like if you just listen to my songs, you would think I am there all the time. But music is my sort of way to process the things that upset me, so that hopefully when I do venture out into the world in real life, I'm not a miserable bastard every time. I can actually sort of interact with friends and family in a positive, nice way once in a while, and try to find some beauty and joy, because this is the only little chance we're going to get at living. And at least that's what I believe. So I try to, try to enjoy it when I can, uh, as much as I can. Even though you're right, it's hard these days.
so is Poppy still around by any chance?
He is not. He passed away before this most recent conflict, so he never saw this. He passed away in 2019, so it's been a little while now.
Oh, I lasted a that's a very impressive life for someone who served all the way back then.
Oh yeah, made it to 91. He's still drinking big cocktails all the way up till the end.
Well, let's play Poppy's Waltz in his memory, and we'll be right back.